Imagine being born into the world the size of a jelly bean, blind, hairless, and immediately expected to go on a solo climbing mission. Welcome to the life of a newborn koala, aka nature's worst onboarding process. If there were an award for most unfortunate first day ever, the koala would take gold, silver, and bronze. Sure, they look like fuzzy teddy bears who spend their days living the chill life in eucalyptus trees, but don't be fooled. Being a koala is like waking up every morning and realizing life is a prank show, and you're the punchline. This is not a creature blessed by nature's design. This is a creature slapped together on a Friday afternoon, right before biology clocked out early for the weekend. Let's dive into why it absolutely sucks to be born as a koala, starting from the moment they squish their way into the world. So, you're a koala. Congrats, you're now a pink, naked, gummy worm with zero survival skills and even less dignity. You're born after just about 35 days in the womb, of which, for context, is barely enough time to binge a Netflix season. You come out blind, deaf, and the size of a peanut M&M. And before you even get to enjoy being alive, nature hands you your first mission: climb. Not just any climb. You've got to army crawl your boneless little jelly body up your mom's fur, all the way to her pouch. And you better not mess this up, because there are no retries. It's like being shoved out the window of a moving bus and told, climb back in, or die. That's your birth story. If, by some miracle, you make it into the pouch, congrats again, you've won the right to live inside a dark, moist fanny pack for the next 6 months. The pouch isn't even that roomy. You're sharing this tight space with your mom's teats, because that's where your dinner is coming from. You latch on, and that's your life. But let's be clear, this isn't a cozy little nursery. It's more like a biological closet that smells like eucalyptus burks and regret. Now, during those 6 months, you're growing slowly, becoming slightly more koala-like and slightly less like a used cotton swab. But here's where it gets extra nasty. Around the time you're ready to start exploring the world outside the pouch, your mom hits you with the most disgusting baby food ever created. It's called pap. What is pap, you ask? Oh, just a special blend of semi-digested eucalyptus poop straight from mom's rear-end kitchen. She literally poops it out, and you eat it. Willingly. Because you need the bacteria in it to digest eucalyptus, which is basically the kale smoothie of the plant world, hard to digest, low in nutrients, and hated by everyone except yoga instructors and koalas. So now you're outside the pouch, clinging to your mom's back like a koala-shaped backpack, nibbling on leaves that are barely keeping you alive, and occasionally being gifted steaming pook soup. All this just to become a full-fledged member of the Eucalyptus Suffering Club. Because unlike other animals who grow up with, I don't know, protein or options, koalas are stuck with one of the worst diets in the entire animal kingdom. But more on that horror show later. At this stage, you're about 8 to 10 months old, barely functioning, and already addicted to leaves that are both toxic and have the nutritional content of cardboard. You can't just munch on any tree. Nope. It has to be very specific types of eucalyptus, or your stomach says, "Now fam, we're done here." And if your mom's territory is short on good trees, guess what? You might just starve. Nature doesn't care. Oh, and don't think you get to hang with mom forever. Once you're around a year old, it's eviction time. She's like, thanks for clinging to my spine for 12 months, but get lost. And so, you're booted into the wild to find your own tree, your own food, and somehow not die. Good luck. You've just graduated from one of the worst childhoods in the animal world, and your adult life is going to be just as tragic. So now you're a teenage koala. You've been kicked out of the pouch, fed poop, and forced into the eucalyptus version of the housing crisis. But hey, it gets worse. Because life as a young koala is basically one big obstacle course designed by a villain. First off, let's talk predators. You might think, hey, I live in a tree, what could possibly eat me? A lot, actually. If you're small or still learning how to climb, a python might drop in to say hello by swallowing you whole. Dingoes would love a bite of koala tartare. And let's not forget domestic dogs. Yep, fluffy little muffin from down the street. Certified koala killer. Add in the fact that you've got to cross roads sometimes to find new trees, and boom, nature's death bingo continues. Cars are like apex predators with headlights. And even when no one's actively trying to eat you or run you over, life still finds ways to suck. Like bushfires. Australia's lovely little seasonal infernos are notorious for turning eucalyptus forests into smoky barbecues. Koalas are slow. Like, sloth onto your quill slow. Their idea of fleeing is sort of thinking about moving. So when fires hit, many koalas don't stand a chance. They literally just sit there like, warm in here. Oh, and eucalyptus trees? Yeah, turns out they're not great roommates. Koalas are so dependent on eucalyptus that if their local tree supply runs out or gets chopped down, they basically starve to death. They're picky to a fault. Out of 600 plus types of eucalyptus trees, koalas only eat around 30. That's like living next to a buffet but only eating the soggy lettuce. Even worse, the leaves are so low in nutrition that koalas need to sleep up to 20 hours a day just to digest their terrible meals. That's not laziness. That's survival. But wait, there's more. Let's say you beat the odds. You didn't get eaten, squashed, or starved. Congrats, now you get to deal with diseases. Koalas are famously unlucky in the health department, and their biggest nemesis? Chlamydia. Yes. That chlamydia. Koalas suffer from a strain that can cause blindness, infertility, and urinary tract infections so bad it's called wet bottom. Which, by the way, sounds like the worst pirate name ever. It spreads like wildfire in populations, especially in areas where they're stressed from habitat loss. So basically, the more their environment sucks, the more likely they are to get STDs. Nature is cruel, and also apparently very into irony. Now, let's pivot to the koala's weird and wonky biology, the strange survival tactics that somehow haven't been recalled by evolution yet. First up, the brain. You might assume that all that sleeping is hiding some deep, zen intelligence. Nope. Koala brains are small. Like, hilariously small. And they don't even fill their skulls. The brain just kind of rattles around in there, like a sad walnut in a cereal bowl. It's shrunk down to conserve energy, which is also why they're kind of slow learners. There's an old, and true, story where researchers gave koalas eucalyptus leaves on a plate and the koalas refused to eat it. Not because they didn't want the leaves. They just couldn't recognize it as food unless it was still on a tree. That's right. Koalas are too dumb to understand salad. Their digestive system is a nightmare biology flax. Eucalyptus leaves are toxic to most animals, but koalas have a super long cecum, a part of the gut that ferments all that poison like a weird internal kombucha bar. That's why they have to eat their mom's pap. They need to populate their gut with special bacteria to survive their adult diet of botanical sadness. And let's not forget about their fingerprints. Here's a fun one. Koalas have fingerprints so similar to humans that even forensic scientists have a hard time telling them apart. Which means that if a koala ever commits a crime, CSI might accidentally frame Dave from accounting. Truly a majestic feature for an animal that rarely leaves its tree. Oh, and the male koala? He has a built-in mating playlist. They bellow a sound somewhere between a chainsaw and a vacuum cleaner dying to attract females. It's not exactly sexy, but it gets the job done. Males also have a scent gland on their chest that they use to mark trees. It's kind of like cologne, if cologne smelled like tree funk and desperation. Let's talk about the moments that really seal the deal on how unlucky koalas are, the weird facts that make you pause, laugh, then feel bad for laughing. For starters, koalas scream. Not in a cute, cuddly way. When a male koala is trying to woo a lady, he emits a bellow that sounds like a haunted garbage disposal choking on gravel. It's so unholy that if you heard it in the wild at night, you'd either run or call an exorcist. Imagine trying to flirt by sounding like a broken motorcycle. Koalas do that. And somehow it works. Another banger, koalas don't drink much water. Not because they're eco-warriors, but because they mostly rely on moisture from eucalyptus leaves. The same toxic, low-calorie leaves we've already agreed are basically edible napkins. So when there's a drought or a heat wave, which happens all the time now, koalas can literally become too dehydrated to function. In fact, Wildlife rescuers often report koalas wandering into towns during heat waves just to lick water off road signs or garden hoses like sad, furry pirates searching for hydration gold. And we haven't even discussed their sleep game. Koalas sleep up to 22 hours a day. Not 8. Not 12. 22. That's barely awake long enough to do anything besides eat, poop, bellow once, and go back to bed. It's like they live in permanent hibernation. But it's not even restful sleep, they're digesting a toxic meal every single moment. That's the biological equivalent of pulling an all-nighter just to process kale chips. And if you thought their hands were cute, think again. Koalas have 2 thumbs on each hand. That's right, 2 legit, opposable thumbs. You'd think this would make them amazing climbers or great at handling tools. No. It's mostly for gripping trees like their lives depend on it, because they do. But despite this thumb bonus, they can still fall out of trees. Hard. Because sometimes, they just lose their grip mid-snooze and tumble out like sleepy pine cones. There are literally rescue clinics for koalas who've fallen out of trees too many times. That's a real medical condition in koala land. Now let's address their communication skills. Besides death metal bellowing, koalas are hilariously bad at socializing. They're solitary, territorial, and mostly just tolerate each other for mating purposes. Males will square up in treetop wrestling matches, scratching, biting, and screaming at each other like furry gladiators. Meanwhile, females are like, EW, no thanks, and avoid everyone unless it's baby-making season. And even then, they're picky. So despite all that screaming and tree rubbing, male koalas often get rejected, which is nature's way of saying, dude, chill. And now, let's wrap up this eucalyptus-scented train wreck with a little perspective. Being born a koala is like spawning into a video game on hardcore mode with a diet of poison, a brain operating on Windows 95, and a daily to-do list that includes don't fall out of tree and avoid burning to death. They're biologically designed to be slow, picky, and tragically under-equipped for the modern Australian landscape. Yet, somehow, they survive. Despite their awful luck, terrible diet, and the fact that Mother Nature clearly built them out of spare parts, koalas have hung on for millions of years. They've become an international icon not for their survival skills, but for their sleepy, clueless charm. People love them because they're underdogs. Fuzzy, weird, poop-eating underdogs. So yes, being born a koala is kind of a cosmic joke. But in that slow-motion tragedy lies a weird kind of admiration. Koalas are proof that sometimes, you don't need to be smart, fast, or particularly good at anything. You just need to stubbornly exist, chew toxic leaves, and somehow convince the world you're adorable while doing it. If you laughed, cringed, or felt mildly guilty for koalas today, do the poor things a favor, like this video, drop a comment about the weirdest koala fact you learned, and hit that subscribe button for more wildlife roasts that are equal parts savage and science. Koalas may have been dealt a bad hand, but at least we can give them some viral sympathy. Or at least some respect for surviving life on hard mode.